You know, for almost half a century, Toys R Us was the place. I mean, it was the most powerful toy store on the planet, just a wonderland for millions of kids. And then, poof, it just vanished. It felt like it happened overnight. So how does a giant like that, a brand so beloved, just collapse? Well, today we're going to dig into the incredible rise and the absolutely shocking fall of Toys R Us.
I mean, just look at this. Who doesn't remember that feeling, right? That feeling of begging, pleading with your parents to take you. And then you'd walk in, and it was like a wonderland. The shelves were stacked all the way to the ceiling with literally every toy you could ever imagine. Action figures, dolls, the latest video games, you name it. See, Toys R Us wasn't just a store. It was a cultural icon. It was a core childhood memory for so many of us.
So that just brings us right back to the big question, doesn't it? How on earth does a company with that much power, with so much love from its customers, go from being the absolute king of the industry to totally bankrupt? It just doesn't seem possible. So let's unpack the story and figure out what went wrong.
Okay, to really get how it all fell apart, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning. The whole story of Toys R Us starts with just one guy and a really simple but brilliant idea that he had right after World War II.
So this guy, Charles Lazarus, he's looking around and he sees the post-war baby boom happening. And he has this light bulb moment. He realizes, you know what? Parents buy a crib once, but toys, they buy toys over and over and over again. It's a genius observation. So he pivots, right? He goes from selling baby furniture to creating a supermarket for toys. Nobody was doing this at the time. And wow, did it take off. The growth was just explosive. By the time the 80s and 90s rolled around, Toys R Us was this unstoppable global machine.
So what was their secret sauce? What made them so successful in those golden years? Well, it really came down to this simple four-part formula. First, you had these massive, big-box stores that were just a dream come true for any kid. Second, they had these exclusive deals with companies like Mattel and Hasbro, which basically made the toy makers totally dependent on them. Third, the brand was recognized everywhere. And of course, you had the face of the whole operation, the one and only Geoffrey the Giraffe.
And man, that formula worked. It worked like a charm. Just to give you a sense of how dominant they were, at their absolute peak, Toys R Us was pulling in over $11 billion a year. Think about that. They were, without a doubt, the undisputed king of the toy world. But here's the thing. While they were on top of the world, celebrating all that success, the ground was shifting right underneath their feet.
And this, right here, is the turning point. The company was about to make not one, but two absolutely catastrophic mistakes. It was a 1-2 punch that, well, would ultimately prove fatal. So we're in the early 2000s now, and a new player enters the game. At first, it looked kind of small, but it would go on to change retail forever. I'm talking, of course, about Amazon. And the way Toys R Us decided to deal with this new competitor, well, it was their first huge misstep.
Okay, so the company is at a crossroads. They have a choice to make. Do they invest the time and money to build their own online store, or do they take the easy way out? Well, they took the easy route. They signed a 10-year exclusive deal to let Amazon, their biggest potential rival, handle all of their online sales. They literally handed over the keys to the future of their business.
And you guessed it, the deal was a total disaster. It wasn't long before Amazon started letting other toy sellers onto its website, which totally violated the deal. So Toys R Us sued them, and they actually won. But here's the really crucial part. While they spent years tied up in court fighting Amazon, what was happening? The rest of the world was learning how to shop online. By the time it was all over, they had totally missed the boat.
So they've already completely fumbled their online strategy. The company's weak, it's vulnerable. And that's when the second mistake happens. And you could argue this one was even more deadly. This was the financial death blow.
So in 2005, a group of private equity firms swoops in and buys Toys R Us for a mind-boggling $6.6 billion. Now this was what's called a leveraged buyout, which is basically a fancy way of saying the deal was paid for with a ton of borrowed money. And it came with a devastating catch.
Check this out. This is how it worked. The new owners didn't put up all their own cash. Instead, they took out about $5 billion in loans and then loaded all that debt directly onto Toys R Us's books. I mean, can you believe that? The company that was just bought was now on the hook for paying for its own purchase. It's wild.
And this right here created a death spiral.
Suddenly, every single year, the company had to fork over hundreds of millions of dollars just in interest payments. And think about what that means. That's money they couldn't use to update their stores or build a good website or even try to compete with Amazon and Walmart. So what happened? The stores got old and dingy. The whole experience just got worse and worse. And customers, well, they noticed and they just started going somewhere else.
So now they're just drowning in debt, completely unable to adapt. The company that once seemed invincible, well, it was heading straight for the inevitable.
By 2017, the game was up. It was over. The company officially filed for bankruptcy. And look, this wasn't just some numbers on a spreadsheet. The human cost was absolutely massive. We're talking hundreds of stores closing their doors, and more than 30,000 people suddenly out of a job.
And then came the final nail in the coffin. In 2018, we saw something that generations of kids and parents honestly thought would never, ever happen. The very last U.S. stores shut their doors for good. An entire era was officially over.
So what's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway? The whole story of Toys R Us is really a classic cautionary tale, isn't it? It just goes to show that even the biggest giants can fall. And it's not because people stopped loving the brand. It's because the world changed, and it changed way faster than they did. At the end of the day, they just failed to adapt.
You know, the story of Toys R Us is powerful proof that no brand, I don't care how big or how beloved it is safe from disruption. And that leaves us with one pretty big, lingering question. In our world today, where change is happening even faster, what beloved brand could be next?